How's it going, everyone, and welcome back to the Change-Up. Every year, some new faces surprise us with their production. And of course, some never do quite reach the level we expect them to. Today, I'll be going over 5 hitters I expect to break out during the 2026 season, based on their advanced metrics and sometimes just a gut feeling. Now, to keep things interesting, I'm going to limit myself to players that aren't, how you say, Roman Anthony-like. By that, I mean that Roman Anthony has already broken out in a lot of ways, and while I fully expect him to take another step forward next season, I don't think that's really a hot take at this point. So I'll be focusing on players that are a bit less of a surefire thing, starting off with the first hitter in Dylan Beavers of the Baltimore Orioles. Now, this might be a bit of a hotter take, but I'm higher than most on Beavers. He had a relatively small sample size last year, slashing .227 with a .775 OPS and 4 home runs in 110 plate appearances. Now sure, those numbers don't exactly jump off the page, but it was a relatively small sample size, as I said. Taking a look at his Baseball Savant page, the underlying stuff also looks relatively average, but he doesn't chase, he walks a lot, and his launch angle and xWOBA were pretty good. Now again, none of this is really all that interesting, but if we take a look at his Prospect Savant page from last season, we're seeing a lot better underlying metrics. Nothing crazy jumps off the page aside from his xWOBA and walk percentage, but he just seems to do everything well. Now, of course, I don't know if Beavers is ever going to be like an MVP candidate, but he does a lot of things that I like, and if he applies some of what made him successful in the minors to his major league game, he'll be a solid player next year. All of this, of course, comes with the small caveat that Tyler O'Neill is on the team and might take up some of Beavers' playing time if he starts out slow, but O'Neill will probably go down with an injury at some point next season realistically, so Beavers should get a pretty good look regardless. Next on my list, I've got Sal Stewart of the Cincinnati Reds. Sal had himself a really nice brief stint in the big leagues last year, hitting .255 with an .838 OPS and 5 home runs in 58 plate appearances. He's a guy whose advanced numbers also look pretty good, again in a pretty small sample size. Something to keep an eye on here is his K percent and walk rate both weren't very good at all, which is slightly concerning, but over such a small sample, it really can't be taken too seriously, especially when his xWOBA, hard hit percentage, and average exit velos all looked pretty good. Taking a look at his metrics in AAA, he's looking pretty damn good as well. The walk rate is pretty middle of the pack and he does chase a bit, but the K percentage is a lot better. And the rest of his numbers are, simply put, elite. He's easily a 40 homer candidate at some point in his career, especially considering the ballpark he currently plays in. Stewart's a guy who kind of advanced pretty quickly up these prospect lists, but looking at his metrics you can definitely see why. He didn't seem overwhelmed at all last season in the brief time he was in the bigs, and I could totally see him continuing to improve next season. Up next, we've got another first baseman in Bryce Eldridge of the San Francisco Giants. Eldridge is a guy I have pretty high expectations for coming into next season, mainly due to his power output. Obviously, playing at Oracle will be interesting for him, but he simply just has some of the best raw power of any prospect in baseball. He made a very brief appearance in the big leagues last year, only getting about 37 plate appearances with some pretty underwhelming numbers to say the least, but the advanced metrics are pretty solid across the board. In his big league sample here, you can see that his xWOBA was very good, and while the expected batting average remained low, he had a fantastic barrel and hard hit percentage, as well as his average exit velos being very good. It's also worth noting that his expected slug was at .506, while his actual slug was all the way down at .179, so probably some bad luck sprinkled in there for him as well. Now, he did whiff and strike out a ton, which is consistent with some of his minor league stats as well, so that might be something to look out for in his game. Obviously, super successful guys in the league like Ohtani and Judge also have not great whiff and K numbers, so Eldridge might just have that type of hitter profile. Taking a look at some of his metrics in the minors, we can see that he did again struggle with the strikeouts like I said, and some of the swing and contact metrics are more average, but the rest of his stats are pretty insane. Looking at the list from his X-slug to his hard hit percentage, you can see why he's known for having possibly the best raw power of any prospect in the league. Playing at Oracle, like I said, will be interesting, and we're not totally sure he'll break camp yet, but when he gets his shot, I'm pretty confident he'll go crazy. Up next, we've got a guy who had a bit of a larger sample size at the big league level, and Jacob Marcy of the Miami Marlins. Marcy had himself a pretty nice season in the majors. While not necessarily hitting a lot of home runs, he did hit .292 with an .841 OPS and 234 plate appearances. We can see here that while his barrel, hard hit, and average exit velo numbers weren't eye-popping, he did square up the ball and didn't chase or whiff often. Now, these stats remain pretty consistent when looking at his minor league metrics as well, with him excelling and struggling with relatively the same things. I'm not sure Marcy will ever really be a power first guy, but when you're walking almost as much as you're striking out, there will always be room for you on a team. Now, something to keep an eye on is that his expected average was pretty down at 229, and while I'm not a big batting average guy, the gap between his 229 expected average at AAA and his 292 actual average at the big league level could cause some people to fear regression. However, the fact that his walk, strikeout, and chase numbers are all great gives me hope that he'll take a step forward next season. If he's able to hit the ball a bit harder and get some of those exit velos up, we could be looking at a really great player next season. Last but certainly not least, I've got Dalen Lyle of the Washington Nationals breaking out next season. Now, I know that he might have already broken out to some people last season, but he only played in about 91 games last year, so those numbers could still be kind of an illusion. But, spoiler alert, since he's on this list, I don't think they are. First of all, two things that jump off the page right away is that Lyle was 100th percentile in both expected batting average and in launch angle sweet spot percentage, which is really interesting to me. I had no idea until I looked at his page. He doesn't whiff or K, and while he also doesn't really walk, when you hit 300, you can kind of excuse that. Now, the exit velo and hard hit numbers were not great, which does coincide with his 9 homers, but he did have 11 triples last season. And that's another part of his game that I like, his speed. Now, speed is something that I didn't factor too much into some of these other guys because you can be a great hitter at the big league level with below average speed. But for a hitter profile like Lyle, where he hits for a lot of average and into the gaps, his speed is super beneficial. We won't look too long at his prospect page since we've had a big enough sample size at the major league level, but we can see that his walk rate is still bad, but some of his other quality of contact metrics are more average to slightly above average rather than below average. So simply put, I really like him for next season based on some of those stats. And those are my guys for next season that I think are going to take a step forward. It's more than likely that not all of these guys will be stars by the end of the year, they're all still super young, but they're all guys that I think have room to take it to that next level sooner rather than later, and next year could be the beginning of that. But with that, thank you guys so much for watching. I'm probably going to do a video on some pitchers that I like, and then some hitters and pitchers that I think might regress next season, so keep your eyes out for those types of videos if you're interested in that type of content. Make sure to like and subscribe if you like this kind of thing, and as always, I will see you guys in the next video.